What's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk Podcast. As always, joined by the Senator Phil Perry. You've heard about the travails down here in Foxborough offensively. Well, Tuesday actually had some progress. We're going to play a whole mess of sound, Phil, because there was a whole lot said about the offense before the practice where things started to turn. First up, this is Mac Jones referring to some of the things that Phil talked about with Bill Belichick years ago. It's all about the buy-in.
Yeah, I think right now there's nothing to focus on besides watching the tape and figuring out what we can do better. You can always assume things, but I've been in different offenses, and a lot of guys on our team have, and we feel confident about it. And that just has to come with reps and in-game reps too. We got to see it on tape and see how it looks, and just the buy-in has to be the buy-in. You have to trust it, but at the end of the day, we're going to figure it out and make this thing work. And we have good coaches that are laying the path for us, and we just have to see it how they see it and come together and dominate together.
All right, so there's Mac talking about buy-in, which we spoke about last week, and you could see the frustration level rising. Phil loved this quote from Mac, though, because it shows the leadership that they're going to need to have, and maybe a little bit of the fact that they ain't backing off on this.
Yeah, I'm going to figure it out. I always have, and I always will, and at the end of the day, you're going to have your ups and downs with anything new, but I've learned a lot of different systems, and the guys around me have too, and we know what football looks like. We know what a good play looks like and the schematics behind it. It's not just the result, it's the process of how it looks. Run play, hat on a hat, pass protection, hat on a hat, and then the guys getting open, which they've done. It just needs to be more consistent, and we all trust in each other. At the end of the day, when I walk on the field and there's 10 people that look into my eyes, I know that they're going to trust me to do the right thing on game day.
So, Phil, of course, this happens at the end of a practice that came on the heels of a horrendous practice on Monday after 2 days off. Abysmal. I mean, I honestly was dumbstruck at how poorly they played. How much better did they play today, old chronicler of all things?
Yes.
Practice.
Yes, they were better. I thought there was some progress shown. I mean, really, the bar was low based on how bad Monday's practice was. And had they had a repeat performance of Monday's practice, it would be, I don't know, what would you call?
I mean, this was a critical day.
5-alarm fire. Would that be an appropriate?
Just disband. They're going to get relegated. I mean, but this was a critical practice, wasn't it? I mean, you can't play the way they did yesterday, coming off a 2-day break, have David Andrews stand there in the middle of a scrum and talk to the team about getting its head out of its collective ass. And then if they had come out today and performed poorly, then it would have said, well, what are we doing? Are we incapable? But they did perform capably, Phil.
Yeah, I'm just going through the 11-on-11s right now. And in the first two competitive 11-on-11 periods of practice today, when Mac Jones was playing quarterback, I had him as 6 for 8 through the air. And it wasn't all check downs. It wasn't all screens. There was plenty of short, quick passing game stuff involved there. But you also saw moments, his second attempt of the day, I thought was a real NFL quality pass play, which we did not see yesterday, really. He was protected for a reasonable amount of time. He found Jacoby Myers over the middle, who had created a little bit of separation. They're on the same page, balls out nice and quick. Pretty good gain for the offense. They're still not pushing it really down the field hardly at all, Tom. We did see Mac Jones push it down the field on one occasion to Devontae Parker, jump ball situation. Really nice catch by him. And I'll go through all of the numbers and we'll have those on NBCSportsBoston.com. But it was a much more efficient day, both through the air, Tom, and I would say on the ground as well. That's what I want
to ask you about. Because the question is, okay, the stretch game has not looked good. And I thought that they did a little bit more straight ahead running in the red zone than we've seen. But I also saw a couple of cavernous holes, cutback holes for Damian Harris in the early stages of the practice. Again, an 11-on-11, which has been when they've struggled. The offensive line comes onto the field and they turn into a puddle. That was not the case. Phil, was it a stretch run day? Or was it more of the straight ahead? Were they trying to make things accomplishable for the offense?
See, what's interesting is now we're at the point in camp where, even during the spring and then early in camp, it felt like we saw a lot of the outside zone runs, that Shanahan stuff. And not to say that they've dialed it back, but they are mixing in the other stuff, right? Whether it's inside zone or it's duo or it's, pulling guards. Like we've seen that the last couple of days, and those have looked pretty good. That's more traditional Patriots
that's what
offense
they do well.
stuff.
That's why they had 15 touchdowns with Damian Harris last year. They're a straight ahead running team.
But they have not gotten away from the outside zone stuff either. And I thought one of their best runs of the year with that was I think it was probably the fourth period of 11 on 11. Or no, it was the second. It was the second period of 11 on 11. And Ramondre Stevenson takes a handoff. Micah Wenu makes a really nice seal on his man. It looked like he might have had to reach block a guy, which is tough for a 350-pounder. You're basically cutting across a defender's face and then turning your body, as I knock over my microphone here, turning your body and sort of walling him off. So you're running in one direction, and then you almost have to pivot. It's a tough thing to pull off if you're not the most athletic guy. But I think we don't have the benefit of replay here, but I think that's what happened on that particular play, and it looked really good. So progress as far as that goes as well. We still haven't seen them kind of put it all together, Tom, with the play action game that is built off of this. But for them to just have a few plays in the run game where there are actual holes to run through, that's a step in the right direction.
Speaking of the different aspects of a play, I specifically asked Bill Belichick at the outset of his press conference today, is there a common denominator to what is failing because the offense is not producing? And to his credit and to our appreciation, he actually entertained the conversation, which I think inevitably he almost had to do. You can't pretend what we're watching and had been watching until today wasn't going on. So here's what Bill had to say. We'll string a few good ones together here from Bill. He gets a little long-winded, went into a little bit of a four corners on us, but tries to explain that you guys are looking at the results. We understand, but there's some shit out there that you might not be noticing. Bill?
Yeah, there's good things and bad things on every play. So some of the good plays that we had on defense were really not good plays if something else would have happened on the play. Some of the bad plays we have on defense, a lot of times everything's right but one thing, or same thing on offense. Everything's good but one thing's wrong. So go back and fix that. Yeah. Well, again, if you look at the result of the play, I mean, that's one thing. If you look at the 22 components of the play, 11 on each side, that's a totally different breakdown. So there's an element of both, but if you don't get the 11 things right, eventually you're going to have problems. So it might look good on a particular play out here, might look bad if something different had happened on the play, if the quarterback had thrown to somebody else, or if the right block had been made properly, it would have been a bad play for the defense, or vice versa for the offense. So kind of look at everything. I know you're very results oriented, I get that, but it's more than just the result of the play. It's what all 22 people are doing. So punt protection, 10 guys are good, one guy's bad, you got a bad play. Doesn't mean the other 10 are bad, but you don't fix that one guy, then it is bad. So I get it, but I mean, we're not going to get into a play-by-play evaluation out here. I mean, that's just not what camp's for. We all have things we can improve in. There's some plays that the quarterback can play better. There's some plays that the quarterback's right and there's a breakdown in protection. Some plays where the quarterback's right and there's a breakdown in the route. I mean, it's a variety of things. Same thing for coaching or playing any other position on the field. There's good things. There's all things we got to work on. That's what we go back in and talk about. So when they all hit on one play, sometimes that's good. Sometimes it's a mistake by the other side that causes it to look good, but really isn't good. So that's what training camp and coaching and watching practice is for.
I guess in the overall, Phil, it's all well and good, and I appreciate the back and forth, but it does whistle past the graveyard on some mind-blowing inefficiencies along the offensive line, specifically caused by Justin Herron earlier this week, Monday, when he got an F- from Phil. And I think Onwenu has struggled a bit as well. Take me through the offensive line in a 45-second blast as to who is performing and isn't, and add in coaching staff, if you could.
Well, I mean, it was an abysmal performance from Herron on Monday, and he was at the center of what I thought were several of the
He was ground zero.
completely blown up plays. I mean, plays where they just had no chance. And you'd look at your notes and say 75 immediately beaten by 9, Matt Judon, or He had to block down on Christian Barmore at one point and couldn't do a thing. Anyway, you swap him out because Isaiah Wynn is still down. So that's the reason he was in the first place. Isaiah Wynn down. Didn't see him today. Justin Herron out at right tackle. Yodny Kajust in. And Just was serviceable.
Got the butt.
He's not throwing people around out there, but he's getting in the way.
How has Onwenu been at the right guard spot?
I would say what's been interesting about his camp is that in the one-on-ones, like he's the only one who has really been able to contain Christian Barmore.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like that he wins every rep, but he has won reps, multiple against that guy. It's the scheme I don't think is a great fit for him. So that's why it stood out to me that on that one play that I mentioned earlier, that he executed that well, seemingly. That to me is important progress for him because he had been losing snaps to Arlington Hambright, I think in part because he doesn't move as well as some of the other guys on the line for this type of scheme that they're trying to push.
So that might have been him hitting a 28-footer, but being a 27% three-point shooter.
Is the Marcus Smart early three heat check. Yeah. That's a cheap shot. I don't need to take a cheap shot at Marcus Smart randomly in the middle of a football podcast.
It's out of the barn, down the road.
Sorry.
What's the
He's
difference?
Actually gotten a lot better at his shooting. Sorry. Go ahead.
What's the difference between Shaq Mason and Mike Onwenu?
Oh. Quickness, movement skills, ability, recognition. I mean, Shaq Mason to me is still a Pro Bowl caliber guard. And while
he got an all-pro vote for me, I threw an all-pro at him.
Yeah. I mean, sure. But he's that kind of player. Whereas, so Shaq Mason's probably he's a top 10-ish guard in football. Whereas Onwenu is, I would say he's a starting caliber guard. So he's, but he's probably closer to top 30. So I think that's the difference you're talking about.
Top 50, 30 teams.
Well, right.
64 guards.
Yeah, 64 guards. Sure.
So let's just trace it then. You have Wynn down, Herron incapable and Kajust. So there we have 2/5 of the line. How has David Andrews done? Because I think it was a mixed bag earlier last week, wasn't it?
It was. And, he is not immune from criticism of the line either, because I saw him clearly lose a rep to Barmore yesterday that again blew up a play. We've seen him, Barmore's given everybody trouble, Ferentz or Andrews or whoever's playing center. Today, those two actually fought. Andrews and Barmore did. Mm-hmm. And they both got kicked out of practice, though they weren't sent to the locker room at the same time, Tom, because that's probably a good idea. We saw that happen on Friday. Justin Herron and Josh Uche get in a fight. They get sent back to the locker room at the same time, and you never know what might happen behind closed doors when you do that with two guys that are still hot. So they avoided that. But I think Andrews has been who Andrews is, Tom, which is, again, not an all-pro caliber player, but solid. And I think the other issue, Tom, here, just to go through quickly, Brown to me has been good. Okay. So there's no issues with Trent Brown whatsoever. And Cole Strange is a rookie. So you've seen him have practices where his pass protection is good in the one-on-ones, and he goes 2-0 in reps against guys that, Lawrence Guy and Devon Godshaw or something along those lines. And then you see him have days where he loses all three of his chances, and you see him have tough reps in 11-on-11. But he's also had days where I haven't noticed him at all, which is a really good thing. The issue that I find interesting right now, based on something Mac Jones told us today, is the way they call their protections, it sounds like, and the communication that they use up front has also changed. So not only has the language maybe of the offense here in New England been altered somewhat, which is what some players have told us. Not only has the scheme been changed, not only is the coaching staff changing, but now the protection calls and the way that those guys communicate up front and kind of speak their own language along with the quarterback is also different. And that one, we'd have to talk to somebody who has a much higher football IQ than I do. I don't know why you would do that unless it's what I think is the case with the offense in general changing. If it's because it's just what the coaching staff is most comfortable with right now. You're catering to the coaches rather than the players, many of whom have been in this system for multiple years, Tom. Make that make sense to me. Make that make sense.
Mind-blowing to me is when you have two coaches who have not installed the system previously, haven't really coached on offense, and now are conducting the implementation of an entirely new offense. I can't imagine they sat around a kitchen table in Hingham at Belichick's house over there and sketched it out together. I'm sure they consulted people, talked about it, figured out the best way to do it. Matt Patricia talked to, former OCs that he's worked with, Darrell Bevel maybe, and said, how do do we do this? Do we do that? And same thing with Joe Judge. But again, you're implementing an offense and borrowing from someplace, Bill Belichick included, who's probably the overlord of the thing. They're talking to somebody and implementing things based on somebody else's, wherever it came from. Again, Bill has forgotten more in one night's sleep, and he could probably do the Shanahan offense as easily as Shanahan. I don't know. Either way, the upshot of it is you have all these guys who've never done it before, and they're not just doing it for the first time, and they're not just splitting time as the offensive line coach with a bunch of guys on the offensive line who are in different spots. Onwenu up for Shaq Mason, Strange in, Wynn on the right side, Brown on the left, where he has been before. He's also the offensive coordinator. He's also the play caller. You have a quarterbacks coach in Joe Judge, who only played quarterback, and we're supposed to suspend all disbelief and say, oh, I guess that's enough. I said this today on one of our show emails. Imagine if the Kansas City Chiefs decided their offensive coordinator was going to be Steve Spagnuolo, former head coach. He'd been on defense for, let's just put him over on offense. Or the Saints had done that with Dennis Allen, former head coach, defensive background. Let's throw him over on offense. Same thing with Gus Bradley. Hey, Gus knows what he's, failed in Jacksonville as a head coach, but he was in Seattle for a while. They did great. Let's go make Gus Bradley the offensive coordinator. And I think we would universally say, well, that sounds like a friggin' stupid idea. But here you actually hear folks, and Matt included, which I give him credit for. Again, it's not his fault. What's he going to say? Bill, I don't think this is a great idea. But, Matt says, I bring a different look to it, because I've seen it on the other side. So I can do that for you, So yeah. Was that a good Matt?
Who has seen it from this side is my question, because both Matt and Bill, that's something Mac Jones has said. I know Bill can coach pretty much everywhere, right? Maybe even remove the pretty much. He has that level of respect from all of us in the football world. But Mac Jones today in his press conference says, we're still working a lot with Coach Belichick, and it's been great for him to describe to us what stresses a defense and what makes it tough on them. Patricia brings a similar strength, though, to a much different degree also to the table. Who's the offensive guy? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Who's the offensive
it's nice
guru?
To have that other perspective, but what about the primary perspective? What about the first person perspective?
Yeah, it's funny. It's it's like you bring, for lack of a better term, contemporarily speaking, it's like you bring in Bill Russell to explain to shooters, hey, this is what the defenders are trying to do to you, and this is how they're going to sucker you in. All right, Bill, teach us offense. No, I'm not a very good shooter. Anyway, we're pissing up a rope with this whole thing.
I know.
Be that as it may.
Can I just say something?
Yeah, of course.
One more. I mean, just from the note, and you mentioned the leadership, I thought that it showed for Mac, which I think it did, but it also, to me, tells me that they're resigned to this offense is that quote from Mac Jones saying, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure it out. So, So whether he is enjoying the experience or not, I don't know, is probably up for debate, but I think there is buy-in there. And the buy-in is, I'm going to make this bleep happen come hell or high water. This is what they want to do. I'm going to show them I can do it. It's not easy. I thought I had last year's down. I know the offensive line had last year's down by the end of the year, but whatever. They're asking us to do something different, so we're going to do something different.
They're making him a hell of a product. I'll tell you that. That's one thing that Mac Jones is having done with his early career. Think about this guy in the first year. He had to beat out a Pro Bowl quarterback, a former MVP, charismatic leader, did it, has a Pro Bowl season, playing for the most exacting and precise coach in NFL history, comes back this year and has to be the full-on leader. But as they've said, we look to Mac. They already do. So he has to stiff upper lip it and say all the right things. After 2 years, this guy has been through, again, it's not through 2 years and it's early. He might throw 104 interceptions, but talk about being steeled to the travails of being in the NFL. It's different than Trevor Lawrence, who might go, 4-28 over his first 2 seasons. But the interesting thing is what Mac is going through is shit that Brady never had to go through. He's not Tom Brady, I know, but it's an interesting arc. I want to button it up real quick with 2 different things. One refers back to the abysmal Monday practice and David Andrews, who just had finished speaking to the team, the offense specifically, the offense, about how shitty they looked. Then he came over and talked to us, and his upper lip was not quite as stiff as Mac's. There was not resignation, but a little bit of realism that peppered his tone.
Look, we'll see. We'll put it all together here, and I think there's always good things you want to try to do, new things, and keep working at them and keep pushing them. Nothing looks as good as it does, the first couple of weeks, and you just got to keep moving forward and keep pushing. And look, the thing is not to be the best week one. Obviously you want to go out there and want to compete, but it's that steady, incline throughout the years. That's when you really have the success. So,
Phil, my reaction is, yep, we know that. Patriots do that a lot. Treat September and October as a ramping up period and find their identity, but they're starting from a much, much, much lower point than they usually are.
But again, the message that I get there is, well, listen, we know we're going to be doing this week 1, and we know it might not even look that good, but we're doing this, which to me, again, speaks to the buy-in. And I think this is an important distinction. You don't have to be a joyous individual to be bought in. You just have to be determined and steadfast. And that's what these 2 guys are. These are the 2 leaders of the offense. They know it has sucked for the vast majority of training camp. And yet they come to the microphone and they say, this is who we're going to be, so we better figure it out. And I think that's a good thing for Bill Belichick. I've said, I think this is a good idea. I think to make this change is probably good. Now, I didn't know about the offensive line terminology. I don't know what they're doing in terms of the terminology behind the scenes for the offense in general. But this is a more modernized kind of attack. And if it works out, it could mean really good things for them as a team. And it could mean really good things for Mac Jones as an individual. It could mean really good things for their passing game, getting more explosive, all of that stuff. These are reasons why you would do it.
Mm-hmm.
But we've talked many times. We just talked about it last night on Early Edition. If practice continued to look the way it did last night, my feeling was there's no way Bill Belichick just rolls with this through the first month of the season, because they won't get a first down. It was that bad. But little progress today. You have people talking about how they're going to stick with this, and so that's, to me, what it feels like. Unless it's a disaster, Tom, like through these joint practices with the Panthers and maybe even with the Raiders, they are resigned to making this work. And that's a little different tone that I've caught this week versus last week, when it wasn't good last week either.
You have to have really mentally tough players to stand out there in 97-degree weather, suck, and not come over and go, look, I'm just doing what the coaches tell me to do, which is football speak for they're asking us to do something really stupid here. And no one has done that.
They haven't. I felt like maybe we got not really even close to that, but it felt like we got glimmers last week of that. Glimmer's probably the wrong word. Hints of that last week from Mac Jones, right? Just the frustration.
Yeah.
Just the,
you're right.
We really want to compete. We got to see this work better. And even today, he did say something along the lines of, we have to see it the way the coaches see it. They're asking us to do this, and we're trying to pull this off.
That's a huge phrase. That's a big phrase to use too, because they talk about that all the time. The receivers had to see the things the way Tom Brady saw them. And if they didn't play as much. So they all have to see it the same way. It's fascinating. What do you expect Thursday night? I don't expect a lot of starter activity. You? They worked so hard today. That kind of underscored they're not playing Thursday.
Yeah, I wouldn't I mean, we still haven't seen tackling. We still haven't seen goal line. I asked McCourty about that today. He's got, like, I'm going to be honest with you. He's been in the league since when? Was it 2010 was his draft class, right? He's been in the league for, this is his 13th season. It's like, I'm not mad about it. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know how many tackles I got left in my career. I'm trying to save those for the games that actually matter. I'm not looking to be lined up 5 yards from the goal line and trying to see if I can beat somebody one-on-one and get them on the ground. So they still haven't done that stuff, but it was hard work today. And as a result, these last 2 days, I think you're right. It's going to be a series, maybe two, of guys that on Thursday night. And Tom, you tell me, but I'd be surprised if we saw Mac Jones.
I would be too.
I know they got a little bit better today, but the line has not been good enough for me to say, you know what, it's worth it. Let's get him those 8 extra reps, because those will make a big difference by the time we get to week 1. The risk reward there, 8 reps or whatever it is, 2 series, you know what I mean? Like, versus maybe having Leonard Williams fall on your ankle.
Yeah.
Like, what's the point?
Can't have it. Let's zing and zang. 4 names each of guys we're looking forward to seeing on Thursday night. I'm going to go first.
Go ahead.
I don't know if Tyquan Thornton's going to be out there, because he might have elevated to the point where he's not going to be out there. I think that'll be a stretch, but there's a chance. So I'm going to skip him, but I'm going to say Trey Nixon. I'd like to see Trey Nixon.
I'm willing to give you credit for 2 names there, because I think they've got to play him.
You're right. You can't set a
right?
rookie. You can't set a rookie second.
Well, and they
round
don't
and
have
say
that
you're
many
all set.
receivers, unless they're planning on playing Nixon and Josh Hammond and Christian Wilkerson
you're
the
right.
entire game.
He's got to play. You can't.
I think you got to play him a little bit. I'm interested in seeing another rookie early-ish draft pick. It's Marcus Jones. So Marcus Jones has actually been out there with the starters lately, and so maybe he does not play a ton, but he's been out there early, Tom, in the slot at times with Jonathan Jones, their usual slot on the outside, and he makes plays. We've seen him get his hands on the football multiple different occasions. He is a freaky athlete. I'm interested to watch him play.
Josh Uche, he is a guy that I'm dying to see succeed for the team, because he's got a unique skill set. Seems like a smart guy, and I just don't get why he's not relevant yet. So I'm hoping Josh Uche gets out there and does good things so that he can find a role as a second round pick that beats back the notion that second round picks don't make much impact here.
I'm going to say I would like to see LeBrian Ray. How's that name for you? Undrafted rookie out of Alabama, who I think has consistently proven that he can rush the passer. He's about 290 pounds, 300 pounds ish in that range. So he's a little undersized to be like a first and second down guy, but we've seen him on the inside create a little chaos. I saw him beat Trent Brown in a one-on-one rep, which is rare these days. I think he's a good player. He's a 5-star recruit at Alabama, but was always banged up. Gets a chance here. Be fun to watch him play on Thursday night. That's 2
Finally
names
for me. Last one for me. I want to see the third down back. I don't know if it's going to be Ty Montgomery. I don't know if it's going to be Jay Taylor, but I want to see the third down back.
I want to see 2 guys that people are going to say, what are you talking about? I want to see Brendan Schooler. He's number 67. They're actually probably going to have to change that. That's actually a fun fact about Thursday. These guys are going to get real numbers, right? You can't have Tyquan Thornton running around there with 51. Brendan Schooler, he looks like a potential core special teamer of the future. We see him out there working with Matthew Slater, special teams coaches. Like we've seen Jonathan Jones do that in the past, Brandon King. That to me tells me they have some hope for this guy. He's a really good athlete out of Texas. So I want to see how many kicking game units he's on and if he makes any plays. The last name I want to see, let's think. They've got to play another guy that has to play. And another rookie.
Right?
I mean, I love watching offensive line, but no, it's Jack Jones. Jack Jones is probably third or fourth on the corner depth chart. I think you've got to see him play a little bit. Ball hawk. I could see him come up with a pick on Thursday.
All right, folks. So take that for what it's worth. Tuesday, a little bit better. Okay. Put a little sunshine in your life. Talk to you guys later. Phil will have next patch this week. We'll get a Patriots game on Thursday. We'll see you on post-game live. No pregame live, but a post-game live. See ya.